The streak lives on for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They won their 12th straight game.
Starter is released off of defense.
Josh Heupel gave an encouraging injury report on Nico Iamaleava in Monday's press conference.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
It wasn't necessarily pretty, but hey, what has been for the Dolphins this season? A 23-15 victory on Monday Night Football.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast.
But you have to start this conversation with the defense. The Rams go 0 for 3 in the red zone, on the heels of a game in which you gave up 30 points to Buffalo and you couldn't get a big stop when you needed it. And the week before against Arizona, you blew a double-digit lead that you had in the fourth quarter of that football game. And the offense had a safety that was involved in that process that was a part of that meltdown for you. But Matthew Stafford throws the ball 46 times. They have 257 net yards passing as a team. The Rams average under 4.8 yards per play. They go 3 of 12 on third down in this contest. The Rams as a team, they finished this game 18 attempts for 70 yards on the ground. It was under 4 yards per carry. Really impressive stuff from the Dolphins defense through and through. And you consider getting Zach Sealer back. Did you notice Zach Sealer out there? I certainly did. I think he made a number of splash plays, getting Javon Holland back and what that did for some of the dynamic play in the secondary. The Dolphins had a couple of injury scares. They had Kendall Fuller went down and it was ruled out very quickly with a concussion and concussion protocol. Cam Smith comes in the game, gives up some receptions, including a spectacular catch along the sideline on a long down and distance situation with inside leverage against Cooper Kupp with a one-handed catch. There's not a lot you can do there. Then Cater Kohu goes down in his first game back after coming back from injury, and you're really sweating what the secondary looks like. Thankfully, he only banged knees with one of the Rams running backs and was back in the game to help the Dolphins defense stiffen once again in the red zone and ensure that they were not going to give up a touchdown as the Dolphins late in this game clung to a lead, and it kind of yo-yoed between 8 and 11 points on a number of drives. The Rams had 3 field goals in the fourth quarter. They kicked 5 field goals total in the game, and they forced the Rams to be methodical, and it's kind of what teams used to do to the Dolphins offense, that the Dolphins offense has been a little bit better about this year, at least with the starting quarterback in the lineup, and that's kind of methodically working your way down the field. The Dolphins forced the Rams to do that. And the Rams, you'd get on the plus side of the 40 or on the fringe of the red zone or into the red zone, and then you'd have a mistake. You'd have a sack. You'd have a drop snap. You'd have a tackle for loss. And those opportunistic plays allowed you to kill drives and do what so often other teams have done to you over the past couple of years when you've been explosive play reliant. Now, let's not say the offense didn't have a banner day against the Rams. We'll get into the offense in the second segment here, specifically too, in his performance. But Chop Robinson gets a sack for the second consecutive game. Looked very disruptive, I thought, just off the TV copy. We'll see what the All-22 tape says. Looked like he played one of his best games as a pro after I thought he played the best game of his pro last week against Buffalo. That's a nice development for a guy who was working through a lot of ups and downs in the first half of the season. I thought Jordan Brooks, extremely active, led the team in tackles, had a tackle for loss. The Dolphins had a bunch. They had 7 tackles for loss. For all the talk about the Rams had 10 and were very disruptive up front, all that's true. The Dolphins had a ton of guys making plays behind the line of scrimmage. They sacked Matthew Stafford 4 times. Sacks have not come in bunches for the Dolphins this season. They've been very pressure and disruption oriented and reliant with pressure packages and simulated pressures, but not actively getting home. And so you have Chop Robinson who finishes a play. You have Chop with a 3-man twist game where they bring Javon Holland as an extra rusher and drop somebody off on the other side, and Javon Holland gets home and has a sack. You have Calais Campbell getting a sack where Stafford is forced off his spot. And then you have the Rams kind of teetering on the brink of field goal territory. And Quentin Bell, of all guys, gets a free run off the left side against Alaric Jackson and has a strip sack of Matthew Stafford near the end of the first half. So impressive stuff from the Dolphins defense after, we just finished and watched the game last week, and you came out of it and you said they didn't have the horses. They just didn't have the manpower. They didn't have the guns that they needed to in this game to hang with a high-level quarterback with an offensive line that had some balance offensively. I think you did a better job of winning early downs and putting the Rams in obvious passing situations. Sure enough, Kyron Williams, the Rams didn't have a run on the day longer than 9 yards. Kyron Williams goes 15 for 62 with a long rush of 9. Blake Corum goes 2 for 8. Matthew Stafford is 1 for 0. That's your 18 for 70. And that was one of the bold predictions that we had, was with Sealer back up front. They were going to be significantly tighter again in the run game than what their season average was of 4.5 yards per carry. They put that on tape. Big time respect for the Dolphins defense at Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer and getting hands on footballs at the line of scrimmage. And they get a tip. And it was kind of it's not necessarily controversial, but I think some people were surprised that Anthony Walker got a second game after David Long was benched last week. Walker comes up with a pick and finished second in the team in tackles. He's not as dynamic athletically. He's a little bit more limited in the range and what you can do with him. But the reliability of what he's giving you in the box versus what David Long was doing, trying to undercut blocks and run into the backfield and make splash plays. You got some young guys that got some run, like Cam Smith, got a lot of action, got a lot of targets, understandably so. But had a couple of nice plays. They ran a quick perimeter screen to Puka Nacua, and Cam Smith saw it quick and got upfield and helped make a tackle on one of those key second half possessions in which the Rams were trying to cut in the Dolphins' lead. So I think there's a lot of good with this Dolphins defensive performance after 2 straight weeks where they really let you down in the second half.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED ON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
You are Locked On Rams Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Los Angeles.
It's with the offense. Obviously, any time that a Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay offense does not score a touchdown, it's a big deal. But why did they not score? Okay? It wasn't, in my opinion, what it's been, other times in the year, pretty obvious lack of talent on the outside, with Puka out, with Cooper out. Wasn't the lack of healthy bodies on the offensive line, actually got a few starters back on the offensive line. It was just an all-around failure by this offense because of way too many negative plays. And I'm not just talking about the two turnovers, the Matthew Stafford interception, the Kyron Williams fumble, both really costly, but just negative plays all over the place. I mean, look at how the Rams offense starts this game. 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, interception, 5-play punt, and then a first play fumble. Absolutely, we didn't even have an opportunity to get the offense going because before these drives were starting, they were already over. I mean, the first play of the game for the Rams offense, after you let the Dolphins march down the field in less than 3 minutes and score, how does the offense respond at home on Monday Night Football? Huge opportunity to go to 5-4. You lose 10 yards on the first play of the game. Getting a little bit cute, trying to get Kyron Williams going. Minus 10 yards on a pass. So obviously it's 2nd and 20. It wasn't even a penalty, and the drive feels over. You get 7 with the Kyron run. You go 10 to Allen. But, of course, this drive is over when it's 2nd and 20, right? So you lose 10 plays on the first play from scrimmage for your offense. What do you do in the next drive? 1-yard gain, incomplete pass, 3rd and 9, minus 10 yards again. All right, so you've got 2 drives, 6 plays, 2 3-and-outs, and 2 plays of negative 10 yards. An abysmal pass and then a Stafford sack on third down on the second drive. So not only, it's not like we were watching Jalen Ramsey make diving pass deflections. I mean, there were a couple sacks that we will certainly get to, but it didn't feel like even this Dolphins defensive line like took over the game or anything. Just negative plays, hurting the Rams every drive. Those first 2 right there. Then, of course, it doesn't get any more negative than an interception. And sure, it was deflected by Calais Campbell, who, look at the Rams, making Calais Campbell look like prime Aaron Donald. He's 38 and probably should be retired. I mean, credit to him, but still, Calais Campbell takes this game over, deflects a Stafford pass for an interception. So frustrating. Because at this point, the Rams defense was starting to get into a bit of a groove. After that awful first drive for the defense, you force a 3-and-out punt. You force a 6-play-and-out punt. And it looks like the Rams defense is picking it up. There's some momentum being built in the building, at home, Monday Night Football. Once again, we know it takes some time for fans to get into the building with the LA traffic. But at this point, you felt like there was some momentum. That pick hurt. And of course, a deflection is never going to be really on anybody's fault, but it just kind of continued the trend of negative plays killing this team. Then the next drive, at this point, it's 10-0. And what is it again? Negative plays. There looked like there was some momentum. Cooper Kupp for 7, Puka for 5. You had Kyron Williams get stuffed, but then 3 yards to Cooper Kupp. Another third down sack. So another basically 3-and-out. I mean, this one was 4 plays. Yippee yahoo. I mean, it's still a negative play killing another drive. The negative plays, obviously, I've said it maybe 400 times already. That's number 1 takeaway. And then the number 2 takeaway, abysmal on third down. We already mentioned it. I mean, it's hard to convert a third down when it's 2nd and 20 on the first drive, but a 3rd and 7 became a 10-yard sack, and then there a 3rd and manageable becomes another sack. So whenever you needed a big conversion on third down, you never got it, either because you were already way behind the sticks with negative plays earlier in the possession, or because on third down, you couldn't protect Stafford and had negative plays. 3 for 12 on third down. 3 for 12. That can't happen. That can't happen when you have all your skill players on the field. I mean, this is the healthiest the Rams have been all season. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, who didn't get ejected in this game. So you had both of them the whole game. You had Demarcus Robinson, barely used him. You had Tutu Atwell. You had multiple tight ends we were using today. We saw some Blake Corum early in the game. We saw Kyron Williams. Everybody was healthy in the skills positions. This Miami defense, I don't think they played like lights out or anything. But like I said, just the negative plays early and often in this game, killing the Rams. Now, we're going to get to the defense and why it deserves so much credit, where despite all of these mistakes by the Rams offense, this game was close the whole way through. But really the kind of the sequence that summed up this game for me was ironically a sequence that ended in the Rams' first 3 points of this game, but it sums up what this game was. Rams, like I said, they go punt, interception, punt, fumble. 5 plays or 5 drives with nothing. And the fumble comes after the Rams punt, the Dolphins get the ball, and in just 2 plays, they throw a pick. Tua throws it. Heck of an interception by Rosenboom. He was amazing all game for our Rams at the linebacker position. He makes a great pick. Now, there's a little bit of return. And this is all adds to the trend. It seems like it's a little play in the grand scheme of things, but it matters. 15-yard penalty for an illegal blindside block should be Rams ball at the 28. Instead, it's Rams ball at the 43. So you should already be inside the 30-yard line thinking touchdown, make it 10-7, you're right back in the game. But even on your best play, arguably of the whole night, an interception, you immediately take away momentum with the 15-yard penalty. I get it. It happens a lot. You know, Braden Fisk and defensive players are not trained to be blockers. It always happens on returns. But it goes from bad to worse when the 15-yard penalty becomes a first play fumble by Kyron Williams. Talk about taking all the life out of this team, out of the stadium, right? First, it was you start to slow down the Dolphins offense, all for Stafford to throw a pick on a tip ball. Sucks the momentum. Then you get a pick, and you should be inside the 30 despite your offense doing nothing. Penalty, first play fumble from Kyron Williams. Energy's sucked out. But wait, there's more. The defense continues to do its job, forces a fumble, back-to-back possessions with the turnover. Jared Verse hits Tua, forces the fumble, eventually gets the ball in the pile as well. And just like that, there's huge momentum for the Rams again. And so what happens here is what kind of sums it up for me. The defense not once, but twice bailed out the offense, gave them an opportunity. And what does the offense respond with? Nothing. You start at the 36, you gain 20 yards and you kick a field goal. It's not good enough. Not good enough when your offense has done nothing all half and you get the ball inside the 40 twice and you walk away with 3 points total. I mean, the defense can't do much more than that. Give you the ball twice in plus territory, already doing their job, keeping it at 10-0 against the Dolphins offense, who I get it, they haven't been great this year, but let's be honest, they've been about as hurt as the Rams. They didn't have their quarterback for half the season. Tyreek Hill was banged up, didn't even know if he was going to play this one. This is about the healthiest they've been as well, and yet the Rams defense doing a decent job, keeping it at 10-0, forcing back-to-back turnovers, setting up the Rams offense twice, but once again, the Rams offense just didn't have it today. They didn't have it. And ironically, this was the only drive where there weren't any negative plays. And it starts pretty well. A 2nd and 10, 14-yard pass to Cooper Kupp. 1st and 10 at the 22. Kyron for 3. Puka for 3. But then once again, the other trend, the other issue in this one, 3rd down. You got a 3rd and 4. A 3rd and 4. And you can't convert. Costly. So despite the defense doing everything it can to make this a even game going to the half, it's 10-3, and then the defense does its job again. Another quick punt for the Dolphins. Luckily, the Rams are able to find some momentum before the end of the half, and thanks to Joshua Carty and a 55-yard bomb, it's a 4-point game at halftime. 4-point game at halftime, despite the offense doing absolutely nothing. Now, unfortunately, the offense didn't get any better in the second half, despite the defense keeping us in it all game long.
The streak lives on for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They won their 12th straight game.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Cleveland Cavaliers didn't have their best stuff again on Monday night, but it didn't matter because once again, this team does what this team does best, and that is find a way to win basketball games. They moved to 12-0. With a 119-113 win over the Chicago Bulls. Donovan Mitchell, I thought, was really, really good in this game. Certainly in the first half. He was a big reason why the Cavs had a good first half tonight. Scored 25 points in the first half. His jump shot was working. Hit 7 threes on the night. I think that first half, probably the best half he has played this season. And overall, this was probably the best game that Donovan has played this season as well. That, to me, is one of the biggest reasons why the Cavs were able to win this game, because they didn't play defense all that well for the most part. I will talk about the third quarter with the bench bunch coming up, because that to me was an incredibly impressive part of this game for the Cavs. They didn't win this game without that group. They certainly don't win this game without Ty Jerome, but Donovan Mitchell did Donovan Mitchell things too. He was really good when they needed him to be really good. And I think that this is a team right now that looks kind of tired. They've played 12 games in 20 days to open up the season. That's a really tough stretch of basketball. And it gets to a point where I don't think it matters who the opponent is. Like, it doesn't matter that the Chicago Bulls aren't great. It doesn't matter that Saturday's opponent, the Brooklyn Nets, aren't a great team. Because the Cavs have played so much basketball in such a short period of time, where they have played more games than everybody else in the NBA. No one has played more games so far this season than the Cavs have. So it gets to a certain point when this team just does not have rest, that they're going to look tired, that their legs are going to look a little bit heavy. I don't think there's a better example than that, than Donovan Mitchell missing that dunk that he missed in the fourth quarter. That dunk would have finished the game. Now, the Cavs still won. It didn't matter. But I think Donovan Mitchell with fresh legs probably doesn't miss that. And I do think if the starters were playing heavier minutes than they are, they'd be in much worse shape. Part of the reason why they're able to gut through these games, despite how much basketball they've had to play recently, is because the minutes for the starters are down. Part of that's because of the way Kenny Atkinson coaches. Part of that is because they had a handful of blowout wins earlier in the season. But Donovan Mitchell, to me, was the best player on the floor tonight. The Cavs are at a point, because of how tired they are, and I just explained why, they're going to have nights, and I talked about this on yesterday's show. There are going to be moments when this Cavs team needs Donovan Mitchell to step up, when this Cavs team needs Donovan Mitchell to go out and be a superstar. Those moments so far this season have been few and far between, and that's a really good thing. That's one of the best things about this Cavs team. But they're still going to need their superstar to go be a superstar. And Monday night, they needed their superstar, Donovan Mitchell, to go be a superstar. And that's exactly what Donovan Mitchell did. I thought the way he came out in this game was awesome. It was in the back of my mind that, okay, well, he also had a really good first quarter against Brooklyn on Saturday and then wasn't great the rest of the game. But I thought that he carried it over. The second quarter, he was really good. And then in the fourth quarter, third quarter, I thought he was a little bit passive, which, we can talk maybe tomorrow about the Cavs' struggles in the third quarter. But then in the fourth quarter, he scored 10 points, and the Cavs needed it. The Cavs needed a boost because the rest of the starting lineup, Darius Garland, I thought his shot looked a little bit off, which is definitely a sign of tired legs, right? So I thought that looked a little bit off. I just didn't think that the starters had it tonight, and they look like a group, like I said, that is a little bit tired. So they needed Donovan to step up. And not only did he score 36 points, he had 8 rebounds. It's a really big deal. I believe he had 4 steals on the night as well. They needed him to do all of those things. They needed him to bring it on both ends of the court. They needed his rebounding. They needed his defense. They needed his scoring. They needed his shooting. They needed his playmaking. They needed everything that Donovan Mitchell was able to give them on Monday night. The Cavs needed it. They needed that was a superstar performance. I don't care that it might not have been his most efficient game. I don't care that he settled for maybe a few more threes than you'd like. I think it was 7 of 16 from beyond the arc. I don't care about that stuff. What Donovan Mitchell was on Monday was a superstar. And that's the reason why the Cavs are 12-0 after that game, because Donovan Mitchell showed up and did superstar things. I also thought it was really good to see, after not having a great game, which he's allowed to not have a great game, Darius Garland helped close that game out. And he has shown so far this season, I think the best thing about his season, and we're talking about a guy that just won Player of the Week, announced on Monday afternoon. I think the best thing so far about Darius Garland's season has been the way that he played in the clutch. And I talked about this extensively on yesterday's episode. But again, in clutch time on Monday night, scores the basket that really puts the game away. That was the basket that, okay, this game is over. The Cavs are winning with less than a minute left. A few possessions before that, penetrates into the lane and finds Evan Mobley for an alley-oop. That was a really big play. Darius Garland has stepped up at the end of games, and Monday night was no different. This is who he's been. He's the guy that looks fearless. He's the guy that looks confident. He's the guy that looks capable of, when the team needs him or needs somebody, whether it's him, Donovan, Evan, whoever, when they need somebody to say, all right, get on my back, we're going home, Darius Garland's been capable of doing that. And it wasn't the most impressive finish to a game he's had on Monday night, right? Like, you think of New York, you think of Milwaukee, even Brooklyn, you think of those games, it's like, okay, this is Darius Garland. Monday night wasn't that, but there were glimpses of it. There was enough of it that said, okay, this guy's here and he's doing these types of things again. So when you can combine that with the performance Donovan Mitchell had, that's a way for a good team to win on a night when they very clearly don't have their best stuff. They didn't have their best stuff against Brooklyn. They didn't have their best stuff against Chicago. I don't know if they're going to have their best stuff against Philadelphia on Wednesday, but the fact that they keep finding ways to win these basketball games when they clearly don't have their best performance, that to me is not only really impressive, but it's a sign of a really great team too. Good teams don't win games. And I said this on after Saturday's game. Good teams don't win games like Saturday and like Monday night, truthfully. Great teams win games like Saturday and Monday night. The Cavs have announced themselves as a great team. They're number one in all the power rankings. They are 12-0. They're the 8th team in NBA history to begin the season 12-0. This is a team that is a true championship contender. Whether everyone likes it or not, this is a team that is capable of winning the finals this year. I didn't know that I believed that before the season, but because of and it's not just the record, it's the way they've gotten to the record.
Guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on products and subscription plan.
Starter is released off of defense.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast.
As Mike McDonald said last Monday, a week ago, everything was on the table for the Seahawks, personnel-wise, scheme-wise, as they tried to right the ship after losing 5 of their last 6 games going into their bye week. As it turns out, that was certainly not a joke from Mike McDonald. Rob releasing Tyrell Dodson, who started all 9 games, 7 of them at Mike linebacker, the last 2 at weak side linebacker. Leads the team with 72 tackles, has been productive, at least on the stat sheet, and yet, as of today, he is no longer on the team, has been waived. We don't know all the details, but reading through Mike McDonald's words today after practice, you can make a pretty safe assumption that there was going to be a benching here, and Tyrell Dodson was not necessarily enthused by that idea. Take a listen to what McDonald had to say a few hours after the news broke.
Well, we really appreciate T-Dot. I mean, he's worked extremely hard, rehabbed, throughout the offseason here. I think this was an opportunity for us when we kind of took a step back and realized where we were at. It was really the best thing for us to move forward that way, give the other guys in the room an opportunity to step up. I hope those guys grab that opportunity by the horns and take it and run with it. And then it gives Terrell an opportunity to find another spot somewhere else, so he can finish the year strong. So that was the thought behind it.
We talked about this last week with Josh Jobe, who ironically is the player that takes the roster spot with Dodson now being on waivers. But Mike McDonald seems to really be pushing the envelope with his philosophy that I'm going to reward the guys that these opportunities. Going to be a merit-based system. I don't care what your contract is. I don't care how many games that you've started. We are going to play the best players that we can play who earn those opportunities. And reading between the tea leaves and the comments today and what's been said in recent weeks about the second level struggling in run defense, Rob, the more that I digest this news, the less surprised that I really am that Seattle ended up making this move today.
Yeah, I think that it's actually was a predictable move considering how much of the Seahawks have struggled in open field tackling and a run defense. Of course, that was the bugaboo that lost Pete Carroll his job a year ago, was the inability to improve at all in run defense over the last couple of seasons, and the fact that it has fallen apart so far this year. Then I think that we anticipated that there might be some turnover there, not necessarily a starting linebacker. As you mentioned, Seattle's leading tackler at this point, and Tyrell Dodson getting released. But I certainly thought that there was going to be an argument for why he might be put on the bench, and whether it be Tyrese Knight, who you have kind of been pounding the table for a little bit, or Drake Thomas, the linebacker I've been pounding the table for a little bit as well. The point is that Seattle had 2 other linebackers who arguably are more reliable open field tacklers, certainly more instinctive football players than Tyrell Dodson has proven himself to be over the first 8 games of the NFL season for the Seahawks. So I don't think that this was a stunning move in terms of Seattle looking for change at the linebacker position. It was surprising to see them give Tyrell Dodson his outright release, but considering the fact that he was on a 1-year kind of prove-it type of a deal, the Buffalo Bills, who he played for very well a year ago, did not compete to bring him back. So there was some concern about him in that regard as well. And look, my very first thought when this news broke is I wonder if Tyrell Dotson got himself in some type of trouble during the week off. That has been an issue for some players in the past. It's one of the things that Pete Carroll used to always kind of talk about every time that they had the break of training camp, for example, or during the bye week, is just make sure that your players stay in the straight and narrow. Unfortunately, Tyrell Dotson has gotten himself in trouble in the past. I am not suggesting that had anything to do with why he is no longer a member of the Seattle Seahawks. But if he did not show the impact on the field or the leadership qualities off the field that the Seahawks were prioritizing, then frankly, kudos to Seattle for recognizing that it was time to cut bait now rather than be carrying a player throughout the rest of a possible playoff contending season that they didn't see in the long-term future.
It's easy to look at the 2 free agent signings the Seahawks made back in March to fill the linebacker holes, Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dotson. It's now really easy to look back at that and say that it was a failure. And look, this is an adjunct failure. There's no other way to put it. You signed 2 players to 1-year contracts worth a total of $11 million. It's not like they paid these guys peanuts. They were expecting them to come in and be quality starters. And unfortunately, they did not meet the standards. And I think linebacker, especially for Mike Macdonald, that is his position. It's like Pete Carroll with cornerback and safeties. You better elevate your game because the standards are through the roof when you're talking about linebackers. And Mike Macdonald, as he said today multiple times, he puts a lot on the plate for his linebackers. And if you can't handle it, then get out of the kitchen. So that's what they've done. They have removed both these guys from the kitchen. And he can say that he wasn't singling players out, but look, you just got rid of both of your starting linebackers he signed back in March to be your starters. You got rid of both of them in a couple weeks span. I don't know that there is a more blatant way to say, hey, our linebackers have not been up to par. You can say what you want about the rest of the defense, and obviously they don't deserve all the blame, but this is a case where smart organizations, they cut losses when they realize that there's, and it's actually very fitting because Mike Macdonald called it sunk costs a couple of weeks ago. And I think a lot of people thought that was having to do with scheme concepts when it really looks to me like it was about personnel concepts here with both your linebackers getting jettisoned. Smart organizations take on sunk costs like that, and they don't try to continue making things work that clearly aren't. And clearly Mike Macdonald was not satisfied with the play of either one of those guys. So now you've got Ernest Jones, who you traded for. Baker was sent to Tennessee for him. And Tyrese Knight, a player that I think that Mike Macdonald's very bullish on, and I have been arguing for weeks, give him a shot. He played well early in the season. Well, now he's going to get that shot. And you could realistically have your 2 starting linebackers. If you can get Jones extended, you could have your 2 starters in the middle for the next 3+ seasons together. So I think this has a chance to still end up being a success, even if the free agent signings were an abject failure.
Yeah, it could be a success. That's the thing, is that now Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, or perhaps Drake Thomas, need to play better than Tyrell Dotson did. And I don't think that there's any guarantee that you are going to see that. Look, I think if you put the optimistic, Seahawk blue glasses on, certainly there's a possibility, as you just said, Corbin, that the Seahawks may have their starting inside linebackers here for the next 3 seasons. If, just knowing that Tyrese Knight is on his rookie deal, Drake Thomas is still under contract. And of course, Seattle made the big move for Ernest Jones. You can't imagine they are going to be allowing him to leave after this season. So there is a possibility that this is going to wind up being a huge win for the Seahawks in the long term. But again, they're going to have to take the bull by the horns, or I can't remember exactly how Mike Macdonald said it, but something to that effect, is that the opportunity now is yours, Tyrese Knight, especially. He name dropped him first and then did mention Drake Thomas a little bit later. So whoever is the inside linebacker opposite Ernest Jones, again, this is your opportunity. You have a divisional opponent, of course, the San Francisco 49ers coming up next, who are going to test your inside linebackers perhaps as much as any other positional group on your entire roster when you consider the run defense, Brock Purdy's decision-making, George Kittle, et cetera, et cetera. So again, you have this opportunity. Tyrese Knight did flash early on. There's a reason why he was not the starter, however. And so I want to see a little bit more consistency in terms of the open field tackling. One thing I will certainly acknowledge is that Tyrese Knight has shown himself to be a better pass rusher than Tyrell Dotson ever did. And so to me, that is one of the most encouraging things about this. We've seen the Seahawks defense start to create some more big plays. For example, Tyrese Knight feels like the guy who has a higher ceiling in that particular regard. And so I think that this is a little bit of a roll of the dice from the Seahawks. But again, as we both have said, you got to applaud Seattle for having the courage to do this type of a move at this point in the season, because it does suggest both that they are certainly still trying to compete right now, but they also are having an eye towards the future, as they should with the first-year head coach.
As long as Tyrese Knight or Drake Thomas, or maybe they both are going to do a combo thing, but as long as those guys come in and they execute their assignments better and they play with more physicality, I think this is going to be something that has positive reverberation in the locker room, because I think the players are figuring out, look, we're going to look at Josh Jobe. He just got a spot on the roster. We're going to reward the guys that earn these spots. Kobe Bryant is playing really well, and he had opportunities before Rayshon Jenkins got hurt. He's going to get in the lineup because he earned those chances. That is something that can really resonate in the locker room, unless your replacement for Dotson just falls flat first, and then you might have some questioning, why did we make this move? But there's a little risk, but at the same time, I think this is a really good chance for McDonald to play to his philosophy, and I think it can result with better success on the field for the Seahawks short and long term.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED ON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Josh Heupel gave an encouraging injury report on Nico Iamaleava in Monday's press conference. But
You are Locked On Balls, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers.
So, yeah, the big news of Monday, I guess, the big news of Saturday was Tennessee won, but really the bigger news was that quarterback Nico Iamaleava did not play the second half. Dante Thornton left the football game. Andre Carrick didn't play in the second half. I mean, Tennessee got kind of beat up a little bit. We talked about it in Monday's show. Well, of course, the very first question that was asked to Josh Heupel in his Monday press conference was about Nico, if there was any update to Nico, and so on and so forth. And he said a little bit more than I thought he'd say, but here's what Josh Heupel had to say about his starting quarterback Nico Iamaleava and his availability for Saturday's game against Georgia.
Yeah, he was with us today. Had a really good day. Feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday. But you guys can monitor the whatever the report is that comes out on Wednesday and track it through the week. But certainly feel like he'll be in a good spot.
Well, I mean, that's encouraging to hear him say that, right? Let's kind of break down his comments right there. He said, "Hey, he was with us today." Well, I'm with you guys here today too, thankfully. Tennessee doesn't have a work day on Monday. Tennessee, comes in, watches film, game plan, meetings, stuff like that. I mean, there are work days throughout the week. Your hard, strenuous work days are Tuesday and Wednesday. Your accelerated walkthrough is, kind of on Thursday, and then it's a lighter practice on Friday. And then, of course, you play on Saturday. So, your work days are Tuesday and Wednesday. You're, hardcore helmet, shoulder pad, lunch pail, all that, hard hat, all that type of stuff, if that makes sense in terms of the physical activity. So, the first part of it, about his statement, I think we can kind of rule out. But he did say that they felt like he'd be in a great spot. Again, one more time.
Yeah, he was with us today. Had a really good day. Feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday. But
feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday. So that's great. And, of course, he said after the game on Saturday night that he anticipates having Nico Iamaleava back out there whenever they're going to go. So, again, that's all good. Truly, I'm going to continue to stress that I think this is a day-by-day thing. I mean, in terms of what's going on right now, I don't know his status as of Monday or status as of Tuesday or anything, but this is no insider information. I'm just saying with what he's got going on right now, it's not like you can play through a pain tolerance or something like that. It is clearly, are you cleared or are you not cleared? If you are cleared, you're a go. If you're not cleared, you will not play. It's one of those situations. So it's very much a day by day thing. Anybody that's gone through something similar knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, Josh Heupel sounded encouraged, and that's fantastic. I would, wait and see for the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday availability reports. I would assume Nico's going to be questionable on at least Wednesdays, and then we'll see Thursday or Fridays if that changes, upgrades to probable or something like that. So I think that's what we really need to pay attention to. So there's encouragement, and it feels like Nico's going to be ready. But if Nico is not ready to play against Florida, what's the confidence level in Gaston Moore? How much practice time does he actually get? And, typically your backup quarterback gets reps with the first team a little bit in the team portion. I mean, the overwhelming majority will go to the starter in the first team offense, but those role players, those receivers, like a Dane Davis at offensive tackle that plays 50% of the time, those tight ends that they rotate, not straight one offense, two offense, but some of those role players, and Gaston Moore's that backup quarterback, he'll get some reps, but a lot of times, the joke was in the NFL, if you're Peyton Manning's backup quarterback, you never practiced. You never did anything because Peyton hogged all the reps. Well, Gaston Moore does get reps in practice. Josh Heupel said that on Monday, and he said that, and Will Brooks had some things to say about Gaston Moore, and Miles Kitselman had some things to say about Gaston Moore. I kind of put all these together. This is what Tennessee's coach and players said about Gaston Moore and the confidence level they have in him.
Yeah, Gaston gets reps throughout the course of practice every day, every week, and that's why he went out and played the way that he did too.
Yeah, Gaston's a super confident dude. He has talked about, how he feels really confident in his game and how he's ready at any point in time to get out there. Just coming out there and, obviously all of us other 10 guys out on the field, making sure that he knows that we got him, whether that's protection or details in the route. But yeah, Gaston's a super confident kid, and everybody has faith in him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Nico goes down. It's, you want our starting quarterback to be there, but, we all trust Gaston. And then just from our defensive standpoint, we knew we had the lead, so we know if they don't score, they can't win. So we just know that's our mentality, not to let them score. So we knew we could win the game that way.
That was Josh Heupel to Miles Kitselman to Will Brooks talking about and speaking on Gaston Moore. I'm going to reiterate kind of what I said on Monday's show clearly. I mean, you saw that from play one, from the one and only play that he went in and played against Alabama when he went in and chucked it deep, right? Tennessee's got confidence in his throwing ability. I mean, dude's got a cannon. He's got an arm. Especially when you were spotted 13 points. Tennessee changed a little bit about how they played, no doubt, but still, you were able to run the offense. They still put the ball in the air as well, took some shots down the field. So it didn't all change. But, I mean, I saw with a 13-point lead against an SEC program, not a Kent State, not a UTC, not anybody else, a UTEP in a couple of weeks. I saw Gaston Moore, Tennessee's backup quarterback, who's a walk-on, mind you, go out there and play fine. I mean, it from the play calling, it's evident that they've got confidence in his ability to go out there and run the offense. And remember, Gaston Moore knows this Tennessee offense better than anybody not named Josh Heupel on UT's campus. Why? Well, Joey Halsley maybe. But why? Well, because he was at UCF with Heupel, and then when Heupel went to Tennessee, he came with him and walked on. I mean, he's been in the system since 2020. Dude knows ball, especially this offensive system. So he's cool, he's calm, he's collective, he carries himself with a lot of confidence. I don't know about you guys, but I want that in a backup quarterback. And why not for Gaston Moore, right? Again, he knows this offense better than any player on the team. He's been there, done that. He's living the dream, right? He's not getting paid for it like you would in the NFL, but he's that second or third option at quarterback throughout his career. Not getting beat up an awful lot unless he's playing scout team, and even then they kind of protect those players. But you're on the team, you get all the perks. I don't know. He carries himself a little bit like just a confident guy, and that's what I want in a quarterback, and I certainly want that in a backup quarterback that has to step up and do some things. So by seeing Gaston Moore's play the other night, I'm confident that he can run the offense. Now, obviously, if he could run it better than Nico, he'd be the starting quarterback. I mean, I'm not trying to say that he's better than Nico. Certainly not. He's got arm strength, but Nico's got a better arm. I feel like he's accurate with a football, but Nico's more accurate. Throws a better football. He's got more spin, got more velo on it. Nico's better, off-platform moving on the run, even though Gaston made some plays out of the pocket the other night. But, I mean, that's Nico's game. I mean, clearly Nico is your starting quarterback, and in my opinion is going to be one of the better players in the country next year. but he's got a bright future. But I think Gaston Moore's plenty capable of going and doing some things. So what's that look like? I think somebody will ask me a question like, what would that look like if he was the starting quarterback for Tennessee at Georgia this week? And I'll answer that later on when we get to the mailbag questions in the show in segments 2 and 3. But it's good that Tennessee's got confidence in Gaston Moore. Hopefully they're not going to need him, but football's a contact sport. You got to be ready to go anytime you can. That is for sure. One other clip I want to play for you guys. The question was asked, at this stage in your coaching career, year 4 at Tennessee, what's different about this game week heading into Georgia? 2022, a lot of similarities, right? I mean, both teams were undefeated in 2022. Both teams here have one loss. Both teams playing for a college football playoff. Both teams playing for a college football playoff. Both teams playing for a spot in the SEC championship game. Potentially that's the case here as well. So a lot of parallels. What's different, or do you have a sense of better comfort, I guess, is the question that was asked to Josh Heupel entering this week's Georgia game?
More prepared. We've been in all of our systems longer. This football game is different than the last one. Still facing a great opponent, and you got to handle everything that comes with being in a game like this, and you earn the right to play in big football games, by what you do during the course of the season. And some of the things that didn't go well last time were a direct reflection of who we were playing, and some of it was some things that we can control too. And in these games, you got to do ordinary things at a really high level consistently. And for us, that means you got to prepare at an elite level. You got to practice really well and put yourself in a position to go play good football.
Yeah, he was talking about that other team they were playing. Yeah, that was a very, very good football team. I mean, obviously that was a very good football team, and that had something to do with it, but also things that they can control, and we'll harp on this as the week goes on. Procedural stuff, pre-snap stuff. I mean, it is going to be loud. And remember, first night game, I believe, at Georgia all season long, at least in the SEC, and they haven't been home in a month. Tennessee's been home for a month, and now Tennessee's leaving Neyland Stadium and going back on the road. So how do you deal with all that type of stuff? We'll talk about it as the week goes on. So good Monday on Rocky Top for the Josh Heupel and players press conference, and some assistant coaches and some more players will speak today. And, of course, that first media availability report, injury report, will come out on Wednesday. But all signs appear to be in good positioning for Nico Iamaleava. And, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to blow smoke. I mean, I 100% believe if you're going to win this game, you need Nico. So, encouraging signs from Josh Heupel. That was great to hear, but I do want to stress it's probably a day-by-day thing for sure. And Josh Heupel's never been one to be obviously truthful about injuries, and I can't blame him there. I certainly cannot blame him there.
Guys, ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on products and subscription plan.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now let's talk Thunder bouncing back with a huge win on the second night of a back-to-back. They beat the Clippers 134-128 in a game in which they once had a 20-point lead. The Clippers only led by 4, 6 lead changes, 3 ties in this contest. The Clippers killed the Thunder on the glass 47-29, but Oklahoma City made up for that by producing 23 turnovers to OKC's just 11 turnovers in this contest. And it was really an impressive showing from Oklahoma City. If I told you this morning that on the second night of a back-to-back, the Clippers would come into Oklahoma City and shoot 55% from the floor, 54% from three, you would have thought that the Thunder lost that game 10 times out of 10. But the Thunder respond with 51% from the floor, 39% from three, and 95% at the charity stripe, whereas the Clippers only made 69% of their free throws. The Thunder won points in the paint 54-46. They lost second chance points only 21 to 17, though. And then Thunder won fast break points by 16-10. I thought that this was a game as just an overarching point where you once again saw it on display, what you saw a year ago. You know, it really hurt the Pelicans in the playoffs. And not to say that the Pelicans would have won that series by any stretch, but they wouldn't have gotten swept had they not tried to fight fire with fire. Like you are not going to play better small ball basketball than the Thunder. Number one, their small ball players are just more talented than you. And number two, their small ball players have done it more than you. They're more experienced than you, and they know how to execute it better than you do. So you cannot fight small ball with small ball. And that's what Willie Green fell in love with in the playoffs. That's what Ty Lue fell in love with whenever the Thunder extended this lead to 20. But once he went back to Zubac, you saw the clean entry passes, and you saw him really feast down low. Now, look, when you take his box score and just look at it on the surface, it's not pretty at all. Like, he's a -9. He did have 22 and 14, but he was still losing his minutes. He did shoot 75% from the floor with no three-pointers. But when you look specifically at the second half, Zubac was a +5, and that's where he scored 18 of his points. And he was really helping this team turn the tide, where he's a +6 in the third quarter for like the final 7 minutes of that frame, which is where the Clippers narrowed the gap. And it was largely because of Zubac and because the Thunder just had to get worn down by facing off with a big like him. The good news for the Thunder is, even if coaches want to stay in love with the big, you look at the upcoming schedule. New Orleans can only offer you Yves Missi, who's a good player, and he had a double-double today. I think of another double-double Wednesday. He's a good player. But past him, it's Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, who is a small ball center, and you know very well, and Daniel Tice. Like, so it's not as though the Pelicans really have any choice. And then on Friday, you have Nurkic, who is going to have a baller night, but nobody really else. Now, the issue would come on Sunday against Dallas, if they can get healthy, if they can have Derek Lively, they'd be able to go to Gafford and Lively consistently, and that game could be a little messy. That game could be a bit harder to patchwork. But I think teams need to stop trying to meet the Thunder where they're at, because at that point, you're letting the Thunder dictate the terms of the game, and when you do, they're just simply more talented than you. They really are. But overall, I thought the grit in this game was massive. The energy in this game was what kept them really in control. You know, they had the early back and forth lead changes. You know, there were 6 of them total. But once they wrestled away that lead in the middle of the second quarter and they grew it to 20, they never give it back. Now, if they get dicey, it got down to like 3 points at the end. But the Thunder were able to still manage the game very, very, very well. And I think that that's in large part because of Mark. Like the trust that you have in Mark to consistently flip through the Rolodex and see what's going to work. For example, some things aren't going to work. Dylan Jones is not working right now. And that's not an indictment on Dylan Jones. Like, we all knew that the jump from mid-major to the NBA was massive. We are playing much better talent at a much quicker pace. But specifically, the jump from you're the offensive engine at Weber State, now you've got 5 minutes to go be impactful. Go do it. That's hard to do. Because like at Weber State, you could use your first 5 minutes of the game to get acclimated, get your legs under you, see how the game's flowing. You've got to be ready to be a positive contributor from the moment you step on the hardwood. And this is something that Cam Woods harped on with developing Ousmane Dieng, of, you know, you're trying to teach them how to be effective in these bursts, in these spurts. And that's why, despite Oos starting for the Blue, which he doesn't start for the Thunder, even whenever he was starting, he would only play about 5-6 minutes at a time, because you're trying to condition him to play and be ready to play and impactful to play in these quick little bursts. And Dylan Jones has to learn that skill. And it's a foreign skill for him on top of a foreign position. Like, I know that he's played off ball at Weber State. I know he's really proud of that. It's different to play off ball at Weber State and to play the 4/5 in the NBA. With all due respect to the mid majors, I covered Division II basketball for a long time. I have a lot of respect for the non-blue bloods, but it's worlds different. So, for example, Dylan Jones was not ready, but it's not as though Mark is stubborn the way other coaches are. Like, he's going to flip through everybody and figure out something. And so you just have this innate trust in him to patchwork lineups and patchwork situations together that gets you to a win. And whenever you have an SGA driving the bus, it makes life a lot easier. Like, Shea was special. He was every bit an MVP in this game. 45 points from him, 9 assists, 3 rebounds, 5 steals, 2 blocks, only 1 turnover, 4 for 8 from 3, and a couple just dagger step backs that really either continued runs or, were back-breaking for the Clippers trying to build momentum. 15 for 16 at the free throw line, where he was able to nail his tech free throws. He had a transition take free throw. And then, of course, he got to the line by getting to the rim. And 61.9% from the floor. For a guy to take 21 shots and to make 61% of them, it's just special. And in this game, I thought he found the best balance so far of when to hit the right buttons. Like, of looking at this as a control room. Like, when do you take the three? When do you cue the pass and take the pass? When do you do these things on the floor? When do you take over and drive? And he's had moments, he's had flashes of putting it all together, but this was the game that was an all-around just special game. Setting his teammates up very well without being deferential. Incorporating his three-point shot without abandoning the mid-range and at the rim. And I know that, his crutch and his mindset is the right mindset of just taking what the defense gives you. But sometimes you can dictate what the defense is going to do. And I think he did a good job of doing that tonight. Was a +8 in 39 minutes and scored 45 points. And it was the recipe. Like, this was the recipe. What we talked about on yesterday's show, what it would take for this team to win without Chet and without any centers, was a more aggressive and decisive Shea, a more aggressive and decisive J-Dub, and then defensively, you have got to play on a string and just swarm the basketball in the paint. And this was how you do it. Because along with Shea's 45-point night was J-Dub's 28 points and 8 rebounds and 6 assists and 2 steals and 2 for 3 from 3 and 68% from the floor. Like, J-Dub was phenomenal in this game. And he, too, played the best he's played at deciding when to be aggressive. Versus throughout this year, the theme has kind of been he's a little too passive this year. But he was superb in this game. But while those two guys stole the box scores, rightfully so, they're going to steal the headlines. This was an all-around team win. And the recipe was simple. Let those two guys drive the bus. Defensively, you just fluster James Harden in the pick and roll. And when he tries to use the pick and roll and hit the roller in Zubac, everybody goes to him, and you live with whatever outlier shooting numbers that the rest of the crew can scrap together. And to the Clippers' credit, they tried their best. I mean, he had a 4 for 5 night from Derrick Jones Jr. You sign on the dotted line every single time. You had a 5 for 8 a night from Norman Powell, who's playing out of his mind right now. Like, you got some quality shooting nights. Amir Coffey 3 for 5. I mean, you shot 54% from 3. Like, the game plan was right. The results were almost like against you. Because again, if the game plan was to blitz James Harden, swarm Zubac, let them shoot threes, they made 54% of them. But it was just this avalanche in the third quarter from the Clippers that makes these numbers look a lot prettier, in my opinion. And that's kind of how we got here. And you look at the first half numbers. In the first half, the Clippers shot 43% from the floor and 42% from 3. And in the second half, they came alive. 66% from the floor, 68% from three. And they still struggled at the free throw line all night. But it was a win that is going to be close on the scoreboard, where it's only a 134-128 win. And the Clippers were within striking distance, had a chance at the end. They were down 3. But a game that the Thunder just felt in control of and felt determined to win. And they leaned on that defense. They leaned on that effort, because these were some tough shots that they were making, including that buzzer beater in the third quarter from Norm Powell. So while the shooting numbers are very pretty, the Thunder played pretty well defensively, despite what you might believe from the box score. And then offensively, you just got the J-Dub game. You got the Shea game.